Welcome back to the Wizards Arena. My name is Draymore, and I am joined once again by,
Jade.
and we are reviewing the rares from JumpStart. We will be reviewing all the new rares plus um, the rares that got reprinted that make worth buying an opener pack, and you get the rare, and you're like, oh sweet, made my money back. I'm not going to go over any rares that are like 50 cents or a dollar. I don't think there was any rares I saw that were like total trash in this set. Most of them are at least decent to good commander or casual cards.
It's a really good jumping on point for somebody trying to build their collection if they're kind of new. Like, it's not as much for established people, but there's a lot of good gems in there for people who've been playing for a long time and might want to pick something up.
Hence their name for this set. Okay, the first card we have is Blessed Sanctuary. 3 and 2 white enchantment that prevents all non-combat damage that would be dealt to you and creatures you control. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, make a 2/2 white unicorn creature token. This basically goes with the white mythic unicorn legend we saw yesterday. And, you get more stuff.
Yeah, it's a reasonable token maker. It's got the ability from, like, the Wanderer. Like, the two abilities are normally kind of separate. Like, I have decks that would like to use each half of those. I don't know if I have one that specifically wants both, but it's a pretty interesting card.
And the advantage to this is if you blink a card with the unicorn legend, you get a token.
True.
So, I feel it comes in at a solid, like, definitely a complimentary, like a lieutenant card almost to your commander. That wouldn't work because that's for a different format. So probably like a 3, 3.5.
I was thinking like 3, 2.5. Like,
Yeah.
the only reason I don't rank it quite as high is because off the top of my head, I can't think of a deck that really wants both of those abilities at the same time. If you find one of those, then I think it does go up to the full 3.5.
So moving on to our next rare, which is also white, is the Steel Plume Marshal. 3 and 2 white, flying in 3/3. Whenever he attacks, other creatures you control with flying get +2/+2 until end of turn. And he's a bird soldier. The soldier bit on him is less relevant than the bird ability.
Yeah, he's a flying lord. Whether you have bird tribal or you just have a deck that's all or mostly flyers, it's like lords are normally 3, but it's all flyers, so it's evasive and it's +2/+2 instead of +1/+1. So it's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, and you could throw him in an angel deck because all the angels fly. It doesn't say specifically on him birds,
Right.
which makes him way more useful and flexible. So that's, again, I feel instead of being, I feel like it's 3.
Yeah, middle of the road. Solid, not amazing.
So I believe we get to go on to the next one, which is blue. This is, I believe, the only blue rare. He's the Corsair Captain, 2 in a blue for a human pirate. He's a 2/2. Enters the battlefield, make a treasure token, and all other pirates you control get +1/+1. So he's a pirate lord. The pirate commander decks, when I made one when the first, when Ixalan block was done, because I didn't wait for the first set to come out. When Rivals came out, then I did it. There just wasn't enough good pirates. This helps it, but in order to make a good pirate deck in Commander, you need like 30 solid pirates, and I don't think we have that yet. We have okay.
Yeah, I think if anything, this is more geared towards historic, because especially with the treasure token, it's essentially a 2-mana lord,
Yeah.
which makes it really good. And
They get to use Rivals and Ixalan there.
yeah, because Pirates right now only has the legendary lord, so having a 2/3 mana lord that they can run a 4 of in historic should make them a lot more competitive.
And then the other thing it also helps is that if you want to make a historic brawl deck, which they're trying to kind of push, like we said, there's a 5-cost Admiral. He can go in there, and it's a 60-card deck, so probably getting there is easier.
Yeah, definitely.
So, again, probably like 2.5, 3 here.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I feel like if Pirates gets there, it goes up in value. It just is Pirates going to get there. Like, it as just a Lord in a vacuum, it's fairly solid. Like, 3 mana for +1/+1, but you get the treasure token to make it a 2 mana one, which I feel like just 2 mana Lords are always better than 3 mana Lords, unless a 3 mana Lord just has an amazing ability.
Yeah. So, moving on to our next card is Inazah, the Gale Force. So it's 3 and 2 blue for the 4/4 flying, the Jin. This is the one that's the 2 white-blue hybrid one that gives all attacking creatures with flying +1/+1 until end of turn. Whenever 3 or more creatures you control with flying attack, each player gains control of a non-land permanent of your choice, controlled by the player to their right. So this is just really weird, kind of maybe group hug, definitely chaotic.
Yeah, I really like it. I honestly was considering making it as a commander deck for myself on my own. I already have an Esper flying deck, so because of that, I'll probably put it in there. But it's a really unique effect, like, because essentially you get to steal the thing you want from the person to your right. And then for everybody else, you can move things around to try to disrupt people. Because, like, someone has something that's really scary, but maybe it's way less scary if someone else has it. So you're like, let's just move things around the table for my best effect. And then it's also, again, it's a potential flying buff. Like, late in the game, you have, like, a couple flyers. You're like, oh, I'm going to dump some mana in it because I have nothing else to do. I give all my creatures +2/+2 or +3/+3.
Well, question, with the way this is worded, if the guy that has the scariest thing on the board is on your left, could you just force pass it around to you?
Each player gains control of a non-land permanent of your choice. It sounds, based on the way it's worded, I believe it's all simultaneously, so I believe you can pick all targets, then they get shifted. So that wouldn't work. But you could still potentially, as long as you get the number of turn cycles, you could move it around the table till it gets to you.
I believe in. So I feel like this is a 3.5. Like,
I agree. I really like it. If for no other reason, it's super unique with white and blue. White and blue is almost always like a Staxy kind of commander, and like this could kind of do that, but it's like it's got the flying thing, but then it's also got this weird like chaos control element, so it's very unique. And I appreciate the color combinations that are super locked in, where every legend's kind of similar, and they come up with something that's different without breaking their color pie. So I really like this card.
I like any card that expands their color pie and doesn't really break it. And now we're moving on to the Sphinxes. There's quite a few. There's, I believe, 2 Sphinxes in this set that are brand new.
I believe so.
We have Ormo's Archive Keeper, 4 and 2 blue, flying. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, instead put 5 +1/+1 counter on him. Colorless 2 blue, discard 3 cards with different names, draw 5. This is really weird. Again, it goes with that whole idea of like run your library out and you're like basically trying to win. But this one, you're just bulking this guy up, swinging for the kill.
So it does a couple things. If you're playing a deck that normally wins with Laboratory Maniac or one of those effects, it can be a backup. If it's your commander, like you can try to set it up to try to have that as another win condition. Like if you're like, man, I like milling myself, but just winning right away is too easy. So you can use the same effect, but now you have to protect your creature so you can actually hit people with commander damage.
Yeah, and also the cool thing is because your commander deck is so big, and he's a 5/5. Like, you only have to activate his ability on the bottom there like 4 times, and they're dead. Like, that's just 25 Sphinx damage to their face. And 3 mana, discarding 3 cards with different names. That sounds pretty easy in Commander.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the very least, it's like kind of almost like a super rummaging because you discard first. Like, the 3 cards with different names specifically make sure you can't be like, oh, I have a huge land glut if they're all basics. That doesn't help you. But every other time, you just kind of get rid of cards you don't want or put cards in your bin. And I feel like it's more of a fun kind of, let's try to do something interesting. It's not going to be hyper competitive. But in a deck where you're using Labman, it could be a potential just backup to make sure you don't accidentally lose to your, like, usually you're like wheeling through your deck or something.
And another thing I really like about the bin ability on this, or her middle ability, is it doesn't get +5/+5 to the end of turn. Like Prowess would be, this is counters. So that's so much better. I think that makes it a 3.5.
I would go with 3, just because, like, it's reasonably competitive, but with Labman in there, like, you could just argue you're only playing this for fun, because literally if you had Labman instead of this, you just win the game.
But it's definitely one of the better Sphinxes we've seen in a while.
I like it. I actually think the Sphinx coming up is better than this one.
Okay. So this one's at 3, and then we go on to our next Sphinx.
So this Sphinx, Scholar of the Lost Trove, it's 5 and 2 blue for a 5/5 flyer. When it enters a battlefield, you can cast target instant, sorcery, or artifact from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If it's an instant or sorcery, you would exile it instead of putting it in your graveyard. Like, it's just really powerful. Like, because you could get some really expensive, silly stuff and just be casting it. Like, this is already a 7-drop. But there's some expensive stuff with Magic that you could be getting a huge discount on. And in blue, where it's not necessarily a ramp color, if you're like blue or Azorius or something, one of the color combinations with blue that doesn't get you a ton of ramp, this could end up just being a really good ramp thing to help get you going. It has a lot of potential in what it can do.
And also, like, you can do weird things like, oh, I'm playing blue-green, because this isn't a legend, so it's got to be in a regular deck. And, oh, well, I can get back instant sorcery or artifact. Okay, I'll get back this stupid 10-cost Colossus from Kaladesh, put him into play, sack him to greater good, draw 10 cards, ditch 3. Well, that's just dumb right there, because he doesn't get exiled, so...
And then if you happen to have him in like a blink deck or a recursion deck, you get repeated value, and then he gets even more silly.
Yeah, like...
Especially with artifacts, just because you don't... The artifacts just stay on there. The instance and sorcery you can do the one time, which is still good.
And especially with your old artifact deck, the white, blue, black one, it's like, oh, you cast a commander, return an artifact to play, and it's like, well, if it's heavy artifacts, this also works with that theme there, too.
Yep. And then this has the benefit where it is casting it, which does mean it's vulnerable to being countered, but sometimes casting it for certain cards can be an advantage. Obviously, it depends on the card.
And then other things that you could do with it, just, you know, if we're playing mono blue, is, oh, bring back one of your favorite cards, like Dreamstone Hedron. I'll spend 3 and sack it again and draw 3. Yes, like, there's just so many ways and potentials for this. Because it's blue, I don't think it's like, you know, a 4.5, but I can see it definitely be a 3.5 or a 4.
3.5 is where I was at.
Yeah.
Like, if it was cheaper, it'd be even higher. But, like, it's a really strong effect. And, like, there's not too many cards that do this as, like, a creature. Like, there's instants and sorceries that let you cast instant sorcery from your graveyard without its cost. To my knowledge, I can't think of a creature that enters the battlefield and does this effect. I think this is unique.
Yeah. The closest one I can think is the red guy that costs 2 that has trample. But he's got to attack, and it's got to be equal to or less than his power, and, you know, so, but that's not an EBT effect, and that's the closest one I can think of off my top of my head, and that's got a lot of hoops to jump through to do anything.
Right.
So let's move on to the next card, which is Kellis Fight Fixer. And this is just weird. 2 colors, 2 black for a 4/3 menace. Whenever you sack a creature, you may pay a blue or a black. If you do, draw a card. 1, sack a creature, and the Fight Fixer gains indestructible until end of turn. This is like the guy from Kaladesh. When you sack a creature to give him +1/+1 and indestructible. It's a cheap sack outlet.
Well, the difference here is this is both a sack outlet and a sack payoff, which is really nice. Because, like, you don't have to sack to her. It's just a bonus thing that she has on there. Like, usually sacrifice decks aren't just blue-black, so it allows you to build a different deck if you want her as your commander. Like, I have a Marchesa commander deck. I'm strongly going to be looking at my list, considering putting this in there. It fits the theme and the colors pretty well. If I can find a spot for it, I might put it in. But it's a very solid card.
Yeah, I like it a lot, especially since, you know, when you're sacking stuff, usually you have to, like, pay mana, or it's at the end of turn the trigger effect goes off, like Morbid. So, like a 4, 3.5.
I'm kind of at 3.5. Like, it has a potential to be higher, but just what I'm thinking about it right now, I'd put it there.
Yeah, I definitely like her. I kind of wish she was a 4/4, but...
Well, for Commander, I don't think that's as relevant. You're not getting Lightning Bolted there too much, so...
It's just one of those old habits from when I first started playing. It's like, well, if it's got a 3 toughness, it's pretty much Garbo. The Witch of the Moors.
This is 3 colorless and 2 black for a human warlock with Death Touch. It's a 4/4. The beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, each opponent sacrifices a creature, and you return up to 1 creature from your graveyard to your hand. I love this card. This is one of my favorite new cards from the entire set.
Usually when I see cards like this, my biggest complaint with them is they put the creature back in your hand. But usually on cards like that, it's because my complaint with it is you're paying so much mana for the card to just go back to your hand. Can we pay like 1 more and just have it go back to play?
But
Where
depending on what you're doing with your deck, sometimes going back to your hand is an advantage. There's some that have cast triggers or like...
Yeah, but this one I do like the fact that it goes back to your hand. Like, it's just for quite a while it had been very costed to put a thing back in your hand. But this is definitely, 4/4 Death Touch is solid straight up, and the fact that you can... So you get to gain life at the end of your turn, too. So you can pay life to do other effects, like... Because Black loves paying life to do things, it's just really good. So...
Yeah, so as long as you gain life on your turn, your opponent sacks, and you get to get 1 back. So, like, it's not, like... It's almost like a budget Shieldred.
Yeah.
So instead of 7, you've got 5... Everybody sacks 1 right away. It's not each turn. Like, it's a better... I feel like it's a better blocker than Shieldred. Obviously, it's not as good on offense.
Yeah. So my question is, do we know when it comes to this card, are cards in this set going to be foiled at all?
I haven't heard otherwise, so I would imagine so.
Because I would like to pick her up for my Shieldred, or him, or whatever for my Shieldred deck.
Do you have enough life gain to make sure that would work, though? Like, I don't think you'd want to run that unless you'd reasonably be gaining life every turn.
I'll have to check, but I do have quite a things with life gain, I think, but I can double check.
It's like I'm personally going to put it in my actual life gain deck, which the odds of that not working are so slim.
Oh yeah, I mean it definitely would work in my life game deck, my
Right.
white, blue, black thing. So this is definitely a 3.5 at least. Probably a 4.
Yeah, I'm thinking 4. Occasionally you overrate things, and I could be, but like when I read it, I was immediately excited.
Well, there's definitely going to be like at least 2 cards I know that are coming up that like I'm really excited for. So
Another thing I think it's also really good for is like an aristocrats deck, because then you're already sacking your creatures, you're gaining life. You make your opponent sack creatures, and most of your creatures are going to be inexpensive. So the fact that it goes back to your hand, you have to cast it, isn't that big of a drawback.
Oh yeah, this is of all the decks. Like I usually try to only put cards at most in 3 decks. So the ones I thought of for this one were Shieldred, Orlo, and Tasabo. My white-black vampire life gain deck. It's just like
You have a Tesa.
Tesa. So it's like, oh, I got all the death triggers double triggering. So sounds great to me. Yeah. So we are moving on to the next card. Lightning Phoenix. This is a weird little Phoenix. 2 and a red, flying in haste that can't block. Beginning of your end step, if an opponent was dealt 3 or more damage this turn, pay a red, return it to the Lightning Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's just a small little Phoenix. It's fine. It's, not the craziest Phoenix I've seen. It's not the Garbo Phoenixes they first made. Like, there was just so many bad ones for so many years. So, I think this is very middle of the road. Nothing super exciting.
Yeah, if you're doing a Phoenix travel deck for Commander, it'll go in there because it's not bad. And the one thing I can see is, like, maybe in Historic with the Arc-like Phoenix deck, you might run a couple of these because, like, with that, you can get this out pretty easy and it's another threat. Like, the question is it good enough to make it into that deck? I don't know, but it might be worth trying out.
Okay. So, I feel like it's like a 2.5.
2.5, 3-ish, yeah. Like, it depends if it actually sees play in Historic. Otherwise, it's, like, down to, like, maybe a 2.
Okay, so we're going to be moving on to the next card. Take it away, Sky Jade.
Alright, so I'm not sure what this guy's name is. Muckus Goblin Grandy. He is Goblin Noble for 4 and 2 red. When he enters the battlefield, you get to reveal the top 6 cards of your library. Put all Goblin cards from them converted mana cost 5 or less onto the battlefield, and the rest in the bottom in a random order. When it attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each other Goblin you control. This card is ridiculous. So you're getting a combination, a super upgraded combination of like 2 of the best Goblin cards. So you have like a Goblin Pile Driver, except it gets +1/+1 instead of +1/+0. And then, what's the Goblin that lets you get like 4 Goblins in your hand off the top of your deck?
Ringmaster?
Yeah, a Ringleader.
Ringleader.
Except this one puts them all into play. It searches deeper, and it's like 5 or less. You're not playing any Goblins except this guy that costs more than 5 anyway. So it's card advantage, it's mana ramp because it puts them into play. Goblins usually have haste, and then this guy gets a huge pump. He's just... I think he is the go-to mono-red Goblin commander now. Like, unless you're doing tokens and doing Krenko, I think those are the 2 options for mono-red.
Yeah, I might switch my Goblin commander to him because I've played Krenko for quite a while, so it'll be a nice change-up. The red-white human warrior we got last set that dug 6 deep should have only had 1 trigger like this guy does. I don't know why she had so many triggers, but this guy, the only Goblin I can think of off the top of my head you don't get to play is the one from Urza's Destiny that costs 6. All the other good ones that cost 5 or less, if you can think of, some kind of way to do it where he's not the commander and have a blink effects in the deck, this could just get crazy too, because you can able to slide into red blue or red white maybe. And if you're able to blink him, it would be cool too. But just on his own, he is ridiculous. And especially with, like you said, most goblins have haste. Lots of lords give haste, mountain walk. Like, this could just get out of hand really fast. And the goblins he gets that turn, if he's given haste, don't have to attack with him. Oh, your board's too big for these little guys to come through. Well, I'll come through. And
well, you can also spread it out. Like, most likely someone can get the smaller goblins while you attack with your gigantic commander at somebody else.
yeah. And then, like, if you have or are able to cast Coat of Arms that turn or the previous turn or next turn, it just gets really crazy.
Well, and not only that, the number one thing I think he does is he also just gives you a little bit of board wipe protection if you're doing mono red, because that's usually the thing with that kind of deck is you rush out, you try to kill people. If they stop you, you're probably done.
Yeah.
Where this guy builds up your board all by himself. Like, I almost, on my first rush with goblins, might not be tempted to play him unless I think I'm going to win the turn I play him.
Yeah.
So that way, if someone boards wipes, I immediately have a potential army again.
And also, if it's late game with red, you could maybe throw in something like Ashnard's Altar and just like, okay, I cast my commander. Okay, put like 4 goblins into play, sack him, recast him, and just keep digging. And it's like, okay, like, I killed my commander twice. I got like 8 more goblins out. And he has haste because of this dumb card, and I swing for a whole bunch.
Well, goblins are already really good at making tokens, and you also have the red 1-mana goblin that got reprinted in Dominaria that lets you sack a goblin for a red, too, giving you more potential backup for that plan.
So, I'm going to resist, because I see him and I go, dear Lord, he is not a 5. I mean, he is extremely good. The question is, are we talking 4.5 here?
I believe so, because not only is he amazing commander, but I think he also will see competitive play. Like, he 100% will see play in historic. He might see play in legacy goblins, like at least some builds that do have the ability to generate that kind of mana, like the ones that you Skirk Prospector is the guy's name, where you could sack goblins for mana.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, well, because they do have in Legacy instant board wipe, so it's like, oh, I sack all my goblins and then I cast this guy from my hand to recover. But usually, people smart, they play that at the end of turn, so that doesn't happen. So this is definitely so far the best rare we've seen. Like, it's they knocked it out of the park with this guy. Okay. So, as we like to say here, back in my day, Minotaurs were crap. Sethron, the Hurlin General. 3 and 2 red. The Hurlin General or another non-token Minotaur enters the battlefield under your control. Make a 2/3 red Minotaur token. Spend 2 of black or red. Minotaurs you control get +1/+0 and menace until end of turn.
And haste.
And haste, yep. Wow, compared to where they used to be. I tried to play a 60-card casual deck when Theros first came out. It needed a little more. It was cool, it was fun, but it didn't get there. With the last Theros set we just got, and now this cow, we got there, I feel. And then, like we've said earlier in the series, Unicorn's got a kind of tribal leader. Minotaurs now have a tribal leader to play in Commander.
Well, it's funny, because they had a couple that were okay for Legends, but this guy is far and above better, especially as a tribal leader, than any of those options. I appreciate that they have the black hybrid cost in there, so you can still keep your black Minotaurs in there, just because Minotaurs don't have a ton of stuff, so you don't want to lose any of the good ones you can play.
Yeah. Like, the only other legend that we had that was remotely good was, like, the red Minotaur from the Weatherlight crew. God, he's so far back, I don't remember what he does. And then his new version, which is better.
There's other ones, because there's the black and red Minotaur that gives your Minotaurs +1/+0 in first strike. It's a discard card, though. It's not, other than that one ability, isn't particularly tribal. It was essentially the go-to Minotaur commander before this one. But it definitely was more focused on discard theme than being Minotaurs.
But this guy, love him a lot. He's, he's not as crazy as the last one. I feel he's a solid 3. Because, between the Unicorn and this guy, at the very least, we've introduced 2 more new tribes to Commander to play. Yay! Like, anytime you can expand what can get played, I welcome it.
Yeah, because people like to, especially Commander, sometimes they just have this weird thing they want to play and just wish a card existed that helped fit their strategy in a flavor way or kind of thing.
Well, unlike the Unicorn, this guy here, I feel, Minotaur is a pretty, standard, fantastical creature. In D&D, you can play it as in some D&D settings, you can play it as a race. So, these are, this kind of becomes one of the things of like, well, I want to play this, and they never had a really good general to play.
Well, plus, as they've given it more support, like, they're actually giving commanders for tribes that don't really have support, like we mentioned, the Skeleton one, the Unicorn one. Minotaurs, having gone to Theros twice, have a decent amount, and then it's like, the way Magic's going, we'll go back to Theros in another 5 to 7 years, and at that point, we might have a reasonable Minotaur package to make this actually a good deck, reasonably competitive.
And, it's a little bit of a tangent here, but, I've said before, you said before, they bought D&D. I expected a D&D Magic set long ago. I don't understand why we haven't gotten any of those yet, I think the closest we got was a Transformers Magic card.
Well, I get that they don't want to necessarily completely combine the IP, but I would have figured in specialty products as, kind of like how they had the signature spell book, a signature spellbook D&D thing. It's technically outside the universe, playable, essentially pretty much a commander. It doesn't have to be playable in Legacy, but just fun cards that add to it. It doesn't hurt. They just did a Godzilla set.
Yeah.
I don't know how D&D is more breaking the game than Godzilla would be.
Yeah. And it's they've said that, Gold Border's pretty much fine, or Silver Border was for a while. So it's you could give them, some kind of frilly border to clearly make it so it's got this border, it's not legal in Legacy. But moving on, we have this nice 3-rated Minotaur Commander. And we'll roll on to the next one.
So we have Zerzoth Chaos Rider. For 2 and a red, we get a legendary creature Devil. Again on theme, new legendary creature type. Whenever an opponent draws their first card each turn, if it's not their turn, you get to create a 1/1 red Devil creature token. When this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. Whenever one or more Devils you can control attack one or more players, you and those players each draw a card, then discard a card at random.
The first thing I thought of when I read his first paragraph was Temple Bell. Because you can use it on your turn. All your opponents draw a card. So that gives you 3 tokens right there.
That would be correct.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And it's again, it's a creature type. Devils don't have a ton of support. They put 1 or 2, at least one other new one. It's an Aristocrat's Devil, and they already have a dying ability, so that's something you can kind of go with. This is definitely one of the less competitive ones. It's a really fun chaos thing just because of the random. Especially if you're oh, I have a janky deck, I'm not too worried about what I have in my hand, but you make people randomly discard cards that can disrupt their plans. It's fun.
one thing I also kind of thought about, I'm going to have to look hard, because with my Mind Razor deck, it's really hard to find a slot, but I'm making people draw lots of cards when it's not their turn, so, making a few tokens, because he doesn't got much attacks, and then maybe if I can get the random discard, so, oh, we draw the board wipe to make you stop, and, oh, I lost it. Also with Thorbin in the deck, that makes these sacking for 1 damage, maggots sack for 3.
Oh, Torbrand, yeah.
Yeah, so it could be pretty useful in that deck. But again, probably a 3 or a 2.5, because there's not much support for Devils.
Yeah, I think it's more of a fun card than anything else, but it's solid. Like, there's definitely stuff you can do with it. You're not like, oh, this is garbage, I'm never going to play it. Like, it's just finding a home for it.
Yeah. So, we're off the races again. Oh boy. 2 in a green, Branch and Evolution Enchantment. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters will be put on a creature you control, put twice that number of counters on it. This is half of Dublin Season that just deals with the +1/+1 counters. This is fine. This mana cost is right, because when you add it to Parallel Lives, 7 mana, which is 1 more than Dublin Season, and it doesn't work with Planeswalkers. And maybe now, because this exists, they'll add a Planeswalkers, or Dublin Season to not hit Planeswalkers, because it's just a very weird interaction they have with it. Because it was made in Ravnica before Walkers existed, so it wasn't even a consideration at that printing point.
I don't see them errating it. And if they were going to do that, they would have done it a long time ago. It's been doing what it does forever. It's a uniquely powerful card. People like it. They're not going to just, like, people like to do their 5-color Planeswalker strategy and have Doubling Season in there. They're not going to just take that away.
But this card, the cost is fine.
The art's really nice, too.
Yep. I like everything about this card. It's, like we said, it's not Dublin Season, so it's not crazy. Dublin Season is getting really close to being a 5 on its own. This, probably just a 4, because it's, more expensive than Hardened Scales, because it has to be, but it's not like it's, 2 mana or whatever. I feel like it's appropriately costed.
Yeah, now there's a lot of these effects. We have the green and black snake or spider?
Snake.
It was a snake that did it. There's the green and white new creature from Core Set that does it. Hardened Scales this. So now there's a lot of effects that you can use depending on your color combination. Green and then whatever your side color might be. And allows you to have redundancy for these effects, which especially in Commander is always nice.
Yeah, so 4 I feel is where this stands, because it's not like you're reading and go, dear Lord,
Yeah, it's really solid. It's not, like I said, or like you said rather, it's the fact that you got the other half of the Doubling Season as enchantment is kind of nice, because like we always had the Parallel Lives and then color shifted into Anointed Procession. We're like, well, where's the other half? Yeah. And now we have it.
Mm-hmm. If they ever do decide to have one that does it for Planeswalkers, I think they realize that it would probably have to cost 6 on its own, because it's just too good. Okay.
So we have Naeth of the Dire Hunt, 2 and 2 green, legendary creature, human warrior. It's a 3/3. Whenever 1 or more of your creatures you control fight or become blocked, draw a card. The beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 2 and a red or green hybrid. If you do, double target creature's power until end of turn. That creature must be blocked this combat if able. This is really awesome. I already have a mono green fight deck. I actually originally had the worm with the weird combat mechanic first. Then they printed the ape with the fight ability built into it. And then immediately this was printed. So I'm going to change my commander again. This one allows red, so I might add red just because it'll allow me to have more fight. I really love the fact that because fight isn't super easy to do all the time. It has the ability to, it also draws off blocks, which makes it just that much better. And I'm really looking forward to changing my commander and seeing what my deck can do.
Yeah, there's several cards that they had printed for fight for a while, and now recently they've added a few more that are like better. It's like, oh, this one says these two guys fight as one, or fight together at that one creature, and that guy doesn't fight back, or I forget. There's some that they've made recently, like rammed through, that it's like, wow, they've realized that there's other ways to do it in green, kind of generating the same effect.
Yeah. Some of those, when they're slightly different, though, don't actually count as fight, so you do have to be careful. Not that you necessarily wouldn't want to use them, just don't assume that they're fight cards.
Okay, so this is probably a 3.5.
3.5. Like,
because it's got the blocking word on it, I would give it a 3.5. Because if it was just fight, like you said, it's a lot less relevant.
Yeah, like it makes it way more flexible, but like I just don't like. It's not super powerful. Like I'm super excited for it because it's just everything my deck wants to do, and it just does it so much better. So I'm very excited to switch my commander for this.
Okay, so let's mosey on over to the reprint section. Now, what we did for reprints here is, to reiterate, is we're not going to go over all the reprints. We're going over reprints that currently MTG Goldfish has at $5. Not at $5, more than $5. So you open your pack, you're going to make your money back. And the first one is Angel of the Dire Hour. It's 5 and 2 white, flash, flying for 5/4. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, exile all attacking creatures. It doesn't have to be your creatures, it can be somebody else's. This gives you what it's used for. We were playing one game once, I had left a lot of my white mana up, and Stan's like, Steve's got something, just don't do it. And yep, he called Angel of the Dire Hour, showing up and getting rid of the board. He just passed his attack phase and let somebody else be dumb.
And then it's also, like, you could potentially bluff that, too. You can be like, oh, I left mana up. Do I have something? Do I not? So, like, it allows a lot of interesting counterplay. And it's also exile and not destroy with so many Reanimator decks out there and Blink decks out there. Like,
and Indestructible.
Yeah. Like, it's a really powerful effect. It does a lot of stuff. It's an amazing creature.
Yeah, I mean, you might think 7 for 5/4 is not good, but she is 3.5, 4.
I would give her a 4, like, because the whole thing is, like, honestly, I'd probably pay 7 for this effect without the 5/4 flyer, because like you have there is a 7 mana white rat that has flash. It's from the original Theros. It kills all creatures and planeswalkers for 7, and this one is better and has a body on it.
Yeah. The only one thing I can think of that's close to this exactly, because it only hits creatures, this one does, is, in its recent, is Spoils of War, is it? Or it's the white one that exiles all attacking creatures.
Settle the Wreckage.
Settle it.
But they get ramp for that.
Yeah.
This one doesn't ramp them, and, like, again, you're getting a 5/4 body as well.
So next we have Carthage Crusade.
Cathar's Crusade is a really great white go wide finisher. Like if you're doing tokens or +1/+1 counters. Like if anything, it was one of those cards I was using so much that I kind of went through my decks and pulled some out just because it's such an easy include in a lot of different decks.
Yeah, like the only problem with this card, and it's just a nitpick, is the math can get pretty painful sometimes.
Honestly, it's one of the other reasons to take it out is like all of a sudden you just have so many dice on your board and are like, oh man. Especially if you're like, oh, I got a whole bunch of creatures coming in, and if they don't actually come in at the same time, they'll have different numbers. But it's an awesomely powerful card.
Yeah. Again, I feel like this is a 4.
I agree.
Yeah, it's super sweet. it amazed me that it was over $5 because it's been $1 for so long.
Well, again, it's one of those kind of finisher cards. Like, it's not as overt as some of the ones we were talking about in the previous video, but white doesn't have as many of those overt finisher cards, and that one kind of sets up your army to do the finishing for you.
Back in the beginning of Commander, this guy was super cool. With the change from Hound to Dog. 1 white for a 2/2. Just okay. If Tiny Leaders was still a thing, he would be a thing, but he's cool. Nice artwork, keeping the old artwork. Not upset to see him back. Not thrilled. It's an okay filler. They're making Dog Tribal to fill it out, so nice to have the legendary frame around him and to have it say Dog instead of Hound.
Yeah, like, if you're looking to make the dog deck, it's really nice to have this available. One, with a new keyword for Dog instead of Hound. The new frame for people who prefer that. Especially newer players are probably going to prefer the more modern look. And then it's just nice because it was relatively expensive just because it was old. Like, this should make it really, really cheap if you actually want to use it.
And this guy, I feel, is like 2.5. Like, he's not something super special to write home about, but he's not garbage. Like,
yeah, it just depends on what you're doing. Like, if you're doing White Weenie, he's reasonable. If you're doing a dog commander deck, then obviously you want him in there, especially because just dogs don't have a lot of options yet. Fine, not exciting.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Brock's Faith Mender. It is 3 and a white for a Rhino Monk. It is a 1/5 with lifelink. If you would gain life, gain twice as much life instead. I love this guy. He's really good. He's a solid blocker. He's got lifelink, and then he doubles your life. Like, it makes it really annoying to attack you. Like, he's got a reasonably big butt, and it's like, oh, so you attack me with a 2/3. So instead of taking 2, I gain 2. Like, it's not worth it. And then any kind of life gain strategy, just doubling your life, just makes it that much more obnoxious.
Yeah, I have him in my Aurora deck, so he's sitting out on the board being a blocker, and Aurora keeps giving me 4 life and upkeep. Like, okay, fine. Yeah. Swinging, baby.
I mean, the only downside is almost always, if you're playing Commander and you're the life gain deck, you're fairly going to get attacked the most because you're gaining life. Unless someone's just doing something degenerate at the table.
Yeah.
But if you're a life gain deck, you should be able to gain enough life that you don't care that people are attacking you.
And that's also why I run Glacier Chasms in that deck. Oh, cumulative upkeep of paying 2 life. Well, I can do that for a while, and I can't lose any life, so sweet. I feel this guy's like a 3.5 or 4, probably a 4.
The only reason I kind of go 3.5 is like,
unless
you have a very focused on life gain, you're not going to use him. Like, he's one of those cards that's super amazing what you use him in, but like, you're not going to just put him in a generic white deck by himself. If he's your only life gain thing, then he's kind of like, why is he there?
So our next one is this silly guy, Kira the Great Glass Spinner. 2 blue and a colorless for a 2/2 flyer. All creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or an ability for the first time each turn, counter it. This I had in one deck once. I took it out. It's really, really good, but it makes life at the table miserable because it takes 2 spells to get rid of a thing. Obviously, if there's smart players at the table, they'll go after the Glass Spinner first. But if the Glass Spinner is the Spirit Commander, that's super annoying. I don't like it personally because of how annoying it can be, but it's a really good commander.
I don't have a problem with it in Commander. I don't use it. But I think this is more geared towards historic again.
Yeah.
Like, this is already a big competitive card in modern Merfolk, and spirits in historic are getting a lot of reprints. Like, we're not that far away from having most of the stuff that's in modern for spirits, and you might run this as a great defensive piece for that deck. Like, a lot of the key cards we're missing from modern spirits and historic are cards from the last few sets that they said at some point will be backwardsly brought onto the client. So, like, spirits in like a year or two, when we get some of these older sets, could be a very powerful historic deck.
Well, they also said that eventually that basically historic will be Pioneer on Arena.
Well, no, because they said they were going to put Pioneer on there. Like,
Yeah.
It'll still have to be a separate format because of all the cards are adding, like, from this and stuff.
True. Okay. So, 3.5.
Yeah, like, as a competitive card, I'd probably go as a 4. As a commander card, probably a 3. So 3.5 makes sense.
Okay, the next one we have is computer being stupid.
Is Ristic Study, blue staple. 2 colorless and a blue. It's an enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1. One of the most famous things in Commander. Are you going to pay for that?
Yeah.
It's really good card draw. Depending on your group, it can be kind of obnoxious. Like, as long as you don't have it in too many decks, nobody's going to mind it too much. It's really strong. I don't think it's especially broken just because, again, it's a taxing effect. If you don't want them to draw, you just pay 1 extra for your spell. And if you need the mana, if you think it's worth it, then you let them draw. You get to choose.
Like this, when it came out, you know, it was like, you know, Prophecy was terrible. Like, I'm not going to mince words, but, you know, it was one of the few cards recognized then that was good. The only thing I dislike about this reprint is the fact that they upgraded it to rare and skipped over uncommon, but it is so ridiculously good. I understand why, especially in draft. Like, you don't want every deck to fucking have like 3 copies of this thing in it. You know, that could just be so degenerate. So I understand why it's got its rarity. It's really good. It's a fair cost of enchantment. You know, it's not like it costs 1 blue. It's fine. This is probably going to be its biggest reprint yet, because it was in Mystery Boosters, but that wasn't a huge reprint because it was such a big set.
Yeah, and before that, it was in, like, Commander Anthologies. Which
No,
was
Commander Arsenals.
That's what I meant, sorry.
But, like, and the only reason I knew was I looked it up ahead of time. But it's like, before then, like, Commander Arsenals was so small, realistically our only reprint was in Mystery Boosters. So this year was the first time we've gotten this card reprinted at all. I'm also hoping this is in Commander Legends, because it's just such a key Commander card that you know, like, that's supposed to be the Commander set. I really hope this is there too.
I don't think it necessarily has to be there too.
Yeah, I'm just hoping because it's been so underprinted.
Because this set is more. It's not like a master set. It's not super expensive. So, like, as long as this set gets open enough, which the thing that hurts this is it's billed as like, oh, you get 2 packs, shuffle up and play. But because of the worldwide phenomenon going on right now, it's really hard to interact and play paper Magic with people in person. Yeah. And I just hope that doesn't hurt the sales of this set. That's one thing that could really affect this set's ability to lower prices on some of these more expensive cards.
Yeah, I mean, I really, really hope there's no second wave that comes in affects the release of the like November, December sets, because that would be like historic Commander Legends, and it's like that could be really bad. But this is definitely a 4.5.
Yeah, it's one of the key blue cards for Commander.
But it is not the most broken thing I've ever seen. Moving on to our next card.
So we have Vidalcan Archmage. It's 2 and a blue for a Vidalcan Wizard. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, draw a card. It's a 0/2. It's a reasonable card draw engine. It's not crazy. It's really easy to kill, which is its like main weakness. But it's a fine player potential thing to use in an artifact deck.
Yeah, and it costs 4, which is fair. It doesn't cost like 2 or 3. So due to the mana cost of the creature and the effect, it's like a 3-star on our list, not 4 or 5-star.
Yeah, not remotely.
It's very fair, middle of the road. Yeah, I don't think there's much more that needs to be said about this guy. I mean,
No, it's there. Again, like, this is a great card if you're beginning your collection, and it's a nice piece to have. You want to build an artifact deck. And it's just one of those things that as you play Magic longer, you get more cards, and you're like, oh, well, this is good, but this is better. And then unless you're, like, doing a deck on theme, then you're more focused on that. But usually you want to have a more efficient version of a card if you can. But it's still 100% serviceable.
Okay. Everybody's favorite from the good old days. 3 and 2 black for an enchantment. Whenever a creature dies, put a counter on black market. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, add 1 black for each charge counter on black market. Now this sounds like, oh well, you might get 3 or 4 black mana and it's okay. No, this is crazy in Commander because it's not whenever your creature dies, it's any creature dies. And if you play lots of creature destruction, wrath effects, this can just get out of hand really fast. There's also like things like the that can come into play and make lots of tokens, and you can just sack tokens to like the altar, and it's like it doesn't care that it's a token. It's like just kill stuff. We don't care. And
yeah, it's a great ramp effect, and like you kind of just illustrated how good its floor is. Even at like worst case, most likely a couple creatures are gonna die. If you have 3 creatures die while this is out, it's essentially a Gilded Lotus. Like, yes, it doesn't give you every color, but like that's kind of like the bare minimum. For some reason, there's no creatures on the board, no creatures dying. Like, if you're getting like 3 mana of a turn, it's already generating its value. And most likely you should be able to get, like, usually this is something that people are going to want to kill because it's generating you so much value.
And I know in our group we don't have a ton. I mean, we do have a fair amount of enchantment removal. So it's very possible this survives out there for 4 or 5 turns and people are like, where is my enchantment removal? That thing has 18 counters on it. It's got to go. So, it was used in standard a little bit. It's going to be fun and historic, especially with the sack decks that they have.
Is it going? I didn't fully detail the list. Do this with.
I did keep the list up because you mentioned it yesterday, and
so we're gonna double check that right now. It's searching. It's not as up as we thought it was.
No, the browser crashed.
But yeah, this is an amazing commander card. Like, there's so, like, black loves to kill creatures, whether it's yours, your opponent's, it's gonna get there and do what you want to do. Like, in commander, you want to ramp so you can play a ton of spells. Then you want card draw so you have more spells to cast. This is one of the pieces you need to just function as a powerful commander deck. Alright, I think it's about to, no. So we're double checking the list right now.
No, this isn't. And this is the Wyona update going, oops, how did we miss her?
Maybe we just want to move on for now so we don't have a whole bunch of dead air.
Yeah, we're going to move on, but it could be in historic. It could not be. Like, it's, one of those great cards. I think it's a 4.
I honestly would put it at a 4.5. It's it's a must answer if you get a reasonable amount of mana generating from this. Like, people cannot leave it on your board, or you're gonna win the game.
Yeah. Like, the only time it's bad is, like you said, if you don't have creatures out and you draw this. So that's the only weakness to it, but... Moving to the next one for you to go over. Everybody's favorite.
So we have Exquisite Blood. It's 4 and a black for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent gains life, or loses life, rather, you gain that much life. This is an amazing reprint. 1, it's a really good card. 2, it's very expensive. And then, conveniently, it combos with the card that just got printed in Core Set, which is Veto, who matches up with the other half of the original enchantment combo, which was Sanguine Bond. So now you have a lot of redundancy for that combo. If you want to be super competitive, like, even generically just having it in a life gain deck is going to be good. And then Veto, like, each piece has so much synergy with other stuff that even if you're not comboing with it, it'll be good. And then occasionally, like, personally, I do run some combos in my commander decks. I'm usually not trying to win with them, but sometimes a commander deck or a commander game goes a little long, and I'm like, all right, we need to end this. Time to pull that combo out. All right. Oh, and we got the list. So why don't we just go over this list real quick so we have it available so everybody knows what it is. So, not coming to Historic from JumpStart, we have Exhume, Reanimate, Scourge of Neltoth, Time to Feed, Ball Lightning, Chain Lightning, some kind of Seer, I do not know how to pronounce that word.
Fadea, something like that, from Planar Chaos.
It's an old green creature, 1 and a green for a 1/1. Tap, draw a card, and reveal it. If it isn't a land, discard it. Lightning Bolt, Shieldred, the Whispering One, Read the Runes, Rhystic Study, Ajani's Chosen, Angelic Arbiter, Draconic Roar, Flame Tongue Kavu, Goblin Lore, Mausoleum Turnkey, Path to Exile, Scounging Bandar, and Thought Scour. So those are the cards that are in this set that are not going to Historic. So that means the enchantment we were just talking about will be, so that is kind of fun to think about.
And like Exquisite Blood is just such a ridiculous card with the combo pieces you mentioned, and it's just, it is crazy, like all the things you can do with it. And the even crazier part about it when compared to Black Market is it's 4 and a black, not 3 and 2 black, so it can easily go in more stuff. This is definitely a 4.5, like.
And it's a great reprint because it's super expensive, but also before both enchantments cost 5, where now you have Veto, which costs 3, so you can more kind of curve into it if that's what you're trying to go for, which I feel makes it even better because like 2 enchantments at 5, you play 1 on 5 or 4 or something, somebody's expecting the other one, they're gonna try to kill it just in case.
So yeah, 4.5. You covered everything that I would say. Like the big thing about this one is it's being reprinted, and it was $35 before it was reprinted, where Black Market was $7. You know, I think this is like one of the most expensive reprints we've seen so far. Like,
it's definitely up there. It's one of the top like 5 or so.
Yeah, Rhystic Study was the only other one that was close. So we should probably like kind of mention the prices going forward. The next one we have is Reanimate. Oh baby, oh baby. This card is dumb. 1 black, sorcery. Put target creature card from any graveyard on the battlefield under your control. Lose life equal to that converted mana cost. This is just so crazy. There's so many things you can do. In the older formats, you can put Grizzlebrand out. In Commander, you can put like any big creature you could let your commander go to the graveyard, you can get it back that way if your commander's now costing you like 12 or 14 mana. I'm glad they've reprinted it so many times recently, because it had been quite a while for a bit. But then when we got to Ultimate Masters, they started reprinting it.
Reanimate is iconic. There are certain effects of Magic that no matter what you're doing is called by the original card that is that effect. And they're called Reanimator decks, a reanimation effect. This is the original card. You had Wrath of God.
This one was not the original card. This one became so iconic, it came over the top of Animate Dead. Because Animate Dead was made first. But like you said, like we mentioned, Animate Dead only gets your graveyard. But Reanimate was just so much better than Animate Dead in every way, shape, or form that, like, it's Reanimate now. Like,
well, I think one of the things that helps that too is because Animate Dead is an enchantment, and like it's a similar concept but different execution, where this is play a spell, get a creature back. But like this way, they can't kill your spell to make you lose the creature before you had that vulnerability.
Yeah, like this card, like the only saving grace on this card is the fact that it's a sorcery. If this was an instant and you could get back Eldrazi Titans and stuff like that with this card, it would be crazy. But most of the ways to get back the Eldrazi Titans and stuff like that is with Shower Grave, which are effects that end at end of turn. So you don't have to deal with the Annihilator 4 over and over and over again.
Well, plus the old Titans usually shuffle in your graveyard, so
yeah,
you
but
need to respond to the trigger.
With the effect, yeah. So that's why the sorcery kind of saves you from going completely mad. This, I feel, is a 4.5.
I agree. Like, it's a great, inexpensive reanimation spell, and then on top of it, if you happen to have a deck where you want to keep your life total managed for a reason, like I have this in Marchesa deck, just because it's an easy way to lower my life total if I need to have my life total not be the highest, and then on top of it, it gives me a great effect while I'm doing it for very little mana.
Now, Krenko is, oh wait, I just had her turn.
Krenko Mob Boss, 2/2 red, Goblin Warrior. Tap to create X 1/1 goblins equal the number of goblins you control. He's legendary. He's a 3/3. The main reason we put him up here is because red didn't have a single rare that was above 5, and we don't want to completely leave red out.
It seems like they just completely left red out. They gave him one new mythic, one new rare. That was it. Apparently, they decided that red didn't really need anything. So it's kind of funny. But, like...
To be fair, this set is more based on themes than colors. And sometimes when that happens, it's not going to be as balanced color-wise.
Well, to be fair also, red did get quite a few good cards. There's Ball Lightning in here, Dual Caster Mage.
Charm Devil's is solid.
Goblin Chieftain that gives haste to your other goblins to go with the 6-cost goblin.
Hamlet back Goliath is a fun commander card. Like, it's usually pretty inexpensive, like money-wise, but
Hell Driver is really good. Also, the Dragon Queen is back again. Magma Quake.
The red dinosaur is also really good.
Yeah, and then Sin Prod is okay. But all of these red cards we just mentioned are all really good. There's nothing wrong with them. You know, it's just they are inexpensive monetarily speaking. Like, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like,
again, this product is more geared for new people, like, who would not necessarily have all these cards. People like ourselves who've been playing for a while just naturally have accumulated these cards and are not excited by them.
Yeah.
But the card we were actually talking about, Krenko, really solid. Before the new guy, probably the best mono red Goblin Commander. Like, if you're still specifically trying to go super wide with tokens, might be worth using him over the new guy.
Yeah, I think he's probably like a 4.
Yeah, he's very powerful. Like, he can, if you can't kill him, he just your army exponentially just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and I have illusionary braces in my deck with him, so if he's the only thing out there and you tap him with the braces on, you get 1 token because he's the only one, and then the trigger sees that there's 2 now, and you make 4 tokens.
Well, you make 2 more, so you
2
have
more,
4.
so I got 4. And then the next turn it's like, oh well, 8, 16, and you just go off like crazy. I like him. He's fun. The Krenko deck I did make is not the most obnoxious thing of being like all goblins and stuff. I tried to put more versatile stuff in there. The other Krenko's not too bad either from when we went back to Rav.
Yep, no, that was fun.
But he's really cool. He's, I feel like he's a solid 4.
Yeah, he's a reasonable card. He's been around for a while. We know what he does. Like, we're just not excited, but he's very solid. If, like, again, he's one of those decks that's specific. You're not going to put him in a non-goblin deck. Like, anywhere besides goblins, he's useless.
Okay. Galeth the Primal Hunter. 10 colors, 2 green. Legendary Elder Dinosaur. He's a 12/12 trampler with the benefit of this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control. If I remember right, in Core, there was quite a few creatures, or was it this set? No, it was Core that had a lot of creatures or spells that were like power or damage done. You can reduce the cost of the spell. Like there was the bad volcanic. For as much non-combat damage as you've done, you can make it.
Oh, okay. The really bad red removal spell. Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
So this seems like a theme they brought out in Ixalan to give it a whirl, see how it went, and they seem to like it. I'm fine with it. It's kind of cool. It's 12 for a 12/12 trampler that will probably universally come out on turn 6 or 7, but he has no protection. He's just a big trampler. He'll die to any targeted removal in the format.
Yeah, in your 99 as a generic big beater, he's okay. Like, again, like I've mentioned before, I'm not a fan of just big beaters with no other effect. Where Galta shines, I feel, as your commander. Like, if you have a deck set up to being able to make him consistently cheap, like, he is a scary commander. A 12/12 trample. Like, green is harder to give him haste, but there's a few things you could do, especially because it's one creature with equipment. There is Concordant Crossroads. There is, like, the Defender you can tap to give your creatures haste. And if you can consistently make him relatively cheap and then just smash out a 12/12 haste trample, it's a scary commander that people have to worry about.
And it also goes in with the mythic that we reviewed for green that got reprinted, the Elven Scout for 3. She can very well make this guy come out on turn 5 and just be like, oh dear lord, that thing is humongous. And you draw a card because it's not much higher than a 12/12 for a regular legend. Right. There's a few, but that's about it. I feel like he's a 4, 4.5. Like, he's just super scary. I mean, if he had protection, he'd definitely be a 4.5. Probably
yeah,
4.
I'm probably thinking 3.5. Like, in the 99, he's very generic. He's fun. Like, if you just want a big, beady creature. As a commander, if you build around him, he can be terrifying.
Okay. Getting near the end here.
So we have Lurking Predators. It's a green enchantment for 4 and 2 green. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put it on the battlefield. Otherwise, you may put that card on the bottom of your library.
And fun fact is, I knew this was a good card. That's not up to debate. I didn't realize this card was getting close to $10 again. Like, for the longest time, it was $1 when it was in my Type 4 stack. It was a nothing thing. So, nice to see it back. It's like the Mythic for 6 that, you do a thing, you get a thing,
Yep. This one isn't as guaranteed. Like, you want to build around this card to use it. Like, it's really powerful and it's fun, but you need a very high density of creatures in your deck to make this worth playing, I feel. Otherwise, or you need the ability to manipulate the top of your deck to make it more likely to hit.
Yeah.
Because
Like,
6 mana for an enchantment, and you're sitting there and it's like, oh, an opponent casts a spell. It's a land. And then you're like, oh, yay.
yeah. Like, the deck that I think of yours when I see this card is Animar. You know, oh, well, Animar has like 64 creatures in it. So it's like, well, 2 out of 3. Pretty good chances I hit a creature. Not that Animar really wants to run this thing in it.
Yeah,
but,
I do not have an Animar.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those cards that I have in the box, like kind of mentioned before. I have a box of cards that I like, that I think are cool, that I'm waiting for the deck that feels right for it. Like, I think it has a lot of potential. I'm not currently using anything.
I would guess and feel that, you know, it's easier to build around than some of the other cards we've seen, so it's probably like 3 or 3.5. Like,
yeah. Well, I feel like it's also really good for this set, because, like, for a beginner, like, oh, just having this enchantment that just puts my creatures out for free, I'll put a ton of creatures in there. Like, that's a lot of fun. Like, especially early on when you're still figuring out what your play style is and what you want to do. Like, fun things are what you want to be doing.
Yep. I remember when I first started playing big creatures. I get to play big creatures. Oh, 3 big creatures? This would be the best thing ever.
Yep.
So 3.
Yeah, I think it's 3. It's very middle of the road. Pretty solid. Not earth-shattering or anything.
Okay. Moving on. Oh, baby. We waited. We went back to Zendikar. It wasn't there. Oracle of Moldea. 3 green elf shaman 2/2. You may play an extra land a turn. You play the top card of your library revealed. If it's a land, you can play it. This girl is crazy. Also, fun fact, there's an uncommon snake from Kamigawa block that says that your shaman's tapped add 2 green to your mana pool. You could run it with this girl. Don't have to, but it makes her more useful because she then becomes a mana dork on top of extra land ramp. It's kind of fun. But finally they reprinted her. It's one of the ones that was on the list for so long that we were like, Bloom Tenderer, Oracle of Moldai, like, where are these cards? Why aren't they getting reprinted?
Yeah, this is probably the most requested Commander reprint we had left for the last couple of years. Like, people have been like, where's this card? And like, it'll come. It doesn't fit what we're doing. Everybody assumed it was an Zendikar, so people were disappointed it wasn't there. Like, because there's a lot of cards that do one half of, like, this is like the doubling season of these effects. There's a lot of spells that let you play a land off the top. There's a lot of ones that let you, like, play an additional land, but this does both. So unlike either of those effects, it gives you a combination of, like, potential ramp and card advantage, because you're not drawing cards, but you're playing lands off your deck, getting them out of the way, essentially filtering yourself into an actual gas card that's going to do something. So it's amazing.
Yeah, and fun fact is this is the most expensive reprinted rare, period. This was $40 before the reprint. It beat out everything else on the list. There were some close competitors, but, you know, this wins. Like, this is what people wanted. They finally got it. I'm thrilled. I did cut back on the number of copies I had because she just got so expensive. I'm like, I wanted to play Commander. I want to have a lot of decks because it's a fun thing. I don't want to play the same thing over and over again. And I can trade in a stack of like 8 Oracles, I think is what I traded in, for a whole bunch of money. Store credit. Like,
yeah, it's a nice thing is it's happening less, but like we've both been playing Commander since like it came out, and like I played a lot of multiplayer Magic before Commander was really a thing. So I was used to looking for cards that were especially good multiplayer, and they would usually be cheap because they usually weren't good in normal constructed formats. And I don't know how many cards I randomly picked up some because like, oh, this is really cool, I like it, it was super cheap. And then since Commanders exploded, so many of those cards went from being dirt cheap dollar bulk cards to expensive cards. Like, I've got extra, traded in. Now I can get some of the more fancy, expensive stuff.
Well, like some of the expensive bulk cards, it's like he'd throw a deck down and be playing it, and it's like, oh, that's a cool card. And he's like, oh yeah, it does blah blah blah. It's like, wait, Bloom Tender does what? How much is that? $1? Like, it's just preposterous, and it's not $1 anymore. Now that we're like 5 years later, it's like it was like 40 or 50 before the reprint.
Yeah.
And now it's 25, which is an improvement, but so 4.5 at least. You know, it's not the break and be all, but it's in every cube. It's in, like, I don't know if it's in Legacy anything, but it's in Modern, and Pioneer's become very combo-y, so it's not there. Historic will open its arms for it. It's like...
It's the most sought-after Commander reprint that we've had in a while. People are super happy about it. It's very powerful. Like, it's not broken or anything. Like, it's one of those cards that doesn't feel like it should be this expensive because all it's doing is helping you set up your game. Like, it's not...
And it doesn't cost like 1 or 2 mana. It's reasonably
it's fairly costed. It's powerful but not broken. Like,
it costs the same amount of mana as like Explosive Vegetation.
Yeah.
So 4.5, love it. Welcome back. You roll
on. So we have Scarecrow. It's a colorless creature for 3. It's an artifact Scarecrow. For 1 mana, you can sacrifice a Scarecrow to draw a card. For 4 mana and tapping it, you can return target artifact creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. It is a 1/2. It's not amazing. Like, if you're doing Scarecrows, you're 100% using this because so many Scarecrows are bad. But in an artifact deck, this is a reasonable way to get artifact creatures from your graveyard back. It's repeatable. Like,
yeah, I was actually surprised when I was looking stuff up before the beginning of the video how much money this guy was actually worth. But I feel that kind of goes back into the whole vein of it was in the Shadowmoor Eventide Lorwyn set, and it just wasn't printed that much. You know?
That was one of the most underprinted sets of like the modern era. Like, it was just before Magic re-exploded and they started printing more stuff.
Yeah, so I was a little surprised that it was $15, but given what sets it came out of,
I thought it had been reprinted once.
Yeah, it might have, but that's what it's currently saying. Like, Bloom Tender came out of that same block, and that's why it was so much money, is because there was so few of the card. He's really cool. I was thinking of maybe put him in my blue-red artifact deck, but upon rereading the card a couple of times, I realized that it's an artifact creature, not as good as I thought. Still cool, but he won't get in there. He will go play with the Scarecrows, and that's pretty much it.
Well, I mean, if your artifact deck is themed on creatures, that makes them a lot better. If it's not just artifacts. Like, you need to have enough, again, creatures that are also artifacts to make him worth putting in there.
But I feel like he's like a 3, because it's thematic and limited in usage. Okay. Getting near the end. There are 2 reprinted lands in this set.
Phyrexian Tower. I was personally really surprised to see this in here. It's really nice. You can tap it for a colorless, or you can tap it to sacrifice a creature for 2 black. It's a legendary land. I don't remember if I mentioned that. This is a classic old school card. It's powerful. Like, sometimes you just need a sack outlet. It gives you a little bit of extra mana. It turns it into black when you do it. It's a great card.
And it's the most fair of the 5 lands printed from that set, from Urza Saga. The red one is terrible, like unbelievably bad. And then you got Gyger's Cradle, Sacrosanctum, and Tolarian Academy, which was probably on a scale of like 4.5 for the white one, 5 for the green one, and 6 or 6.5 for the blue one. Like, there was just no logic thought of when any of those made.
To be fair, I'd have to modify one of those, and that would be the enchantment one, because when it came out, that one was also considered garbage. It wasn't until much later that you'd have enough enchantments in certain decks that made it useful. Like, it was very underplayed. Like, that card used to be dirt cheap. Not like Academy and Cradle, which have been expensive. The only reason Academy isn't more expensive is because it's banned everywhere, because it's the Oko of its generation.
Yeah, it's just like... And the stupid thing is you hear that the red and the black one were supposed to be different cards, very similar to the other three. But they thought they were too powerful, so at the last minute they got changes. I don't even know what the... I've heard rumors of what they were supposed to do, but I'm just scared. I'm like, who the hell let Blue have that Academy? Like,
Not even that. Like, when you say that, it's like, imagine how broken the other two must have been that they actually changed those compared to the ones they kept.
Yeah,
like, that's terrifying how broken those cards must have been.
Like, did Phyrexian Tower give you black for every card in everybody's graveyard? You get a black mana for that, and you're playing discard? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, this I feel is awesome, like you said. Legendary, colorless mana, sacking creatures. It's a sack outlet also for black market. Very solid 4.5. Love it. I like it. And we've gone over all the other lands. Just to note, the red one's like half a star. In case you were wondering. Shivering Gorge. Terrible. 2 in a red to tap to do a point of damage to all opponents. Ugh.
The funny thing is, they actually made one that was like similar but worse. I can't remember what it was from, but it's even worse than that one for red.
So, we're on to the last card, and this is another one that surprised me seeing it here. Riptide Laboratory. We hadn't seen this reprinted in quite a while. It is welcome. We've seen a few wizards, so it's not a big shock. I'm just surprised they reprinted it.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen this printed since the dual decks that had wizards, which is quite a while ago.
New card frame, tap colorless and blue, bounce a wizard back to controller's hand. I had taken this out of my wizard's deck because it was the old card frame, and I wasn't a huge fan of it, of the card frame, that is. The card I liked. And this was 10 with the reprint. It's going to go down. I might stick this back in my wizard's deck. Again, I'm going to have to count how many islands. I don't want to run too many non-island cards because I run the lens in that deck.
Yeah, but it's a great utility land for wizards. Like, this might even see play in historic. Like, there'll be 2 different wizard decks potentially. There's like the red-blue aggro one that's like kind of prowess and spell. It won't go in there. But there is a lot of wizards with ETB effects. And just being able to potentially use those over and over again is really good.
Like, this is really good with Venser. The original Venser, 2 colorless, 2 blue. Bounce a spell off the stack or bounce a permanent back into their hand. Well, that sounds pretty good to me. Just keep doing them every turn.
It's also really flexible because you can be like, oh, somebody's going to kill my wizard. I'm going to return it to my hand. Like, so again, it turns into like that blue creature that you weren't too happy with, where they have to have 2 kill spells to kill your thing, because all your stuff's wizards. And it's like, well, if you kill it, I return it.
Yep.
At least this way, you do have to recast it.
Yeah.
But
it's
quite often, you're going to have an ETB effect or something on the board that gives you a bonus for playing it.
Or they're trying to kill your commander, and you stick the commander back in your hand. I'm sure he's looking forward to that happening.
Not particularly. She draws so many cards.
But this is I feel like a 3.5. It's very limited. You can only tap it to do its thing once.
Like, I'd put it at a 3. It's one of those ones that is powerful, but again, like, you're putting it in a wizard deck. It's like some of the other ones where it's very powerful, but it's niche. It's not a generically powerful go in any deck you want. Like, you're going to use this in either a wizard commander deck, like some kind of wizard deck. The only way I see maybe not is if you have, like, your commander itself is a wizard and has an ETB. It might be worth putting it in there just for your commander.
Yeah.
Or even necessarily just to save it from being killed if you're worried about how expensive it could get.
But this is a 3. There's only a few other things I want to mention before we end the video. Is we're not going to go over the cheap rares, and we're not going to go over all the uncommons. But I know for the uncommons, there's Path to Exile, Chain Lightning, there's Lightning Bolt, I believe is a common. So there's good stuff even at other rarity levels that we're just not going to review, because we could be here for days and days. But if there is something you want to see us go over, maybe potentially do like a podcast every other week, just let us know in the comment section below. Please like, share, and subscribe. And my name's been Draymore.
I was Sky Jade.
And this was the Wizards Arena, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.